So this week's assignment on socialization was a lot of fun and very enlightening for me because I got to self-reflect about myself, about my beliefs and my values and how they fit in with socialization and political science. So first thing I'm going to start talking about is the order freedom quadrant and how that is made up. So for freedom left, the ideas are that you get to make your own rules, free expression. Part of that would be protest. So the main groups that fit in that are some Democrats and libertarians. So then on the opposite side of that, freedom right, you have make your own luck instead of make your own rules, and individual responsibility and initiative, and free market, which involves business. So mainly what makes up this are Republicans and free market libertarians. Now when we're talking about order, let's start with order left. That's the need for equality and the redistribution of wealth. So equality overall, everyone should be equal. That mainly is going to be made up by Democrats and modern liberals. On the opposite side, in order right, we have the need to follow social rules and rules in general. Really important for rules. Equality through charity. Private charity, though, to help those in need. And this is mainly made up of Republicans and traditional conservatives. So, me, where do I fit in? I don't really fit into any one of these four quadrants. I feel like because of the way I was raised, my socialization, I'll get more on that in a minute, I have pieces and parts from every single of the quadrants that I believe in or, have helped shape my beliefs. So, I believe in what we read about a little bit in this week's readings with the boundary crossing politics, how our two main parties, Democrats and Republicans, where the lefts are mainly the Democrats in terms of left order and left freedom, and the right is really the Republicans with the order right and the order freedom, or the right order and the right freedom. And I feel like this is something that we read with the two tired parties that are out of date. I feel like they really are how that reading described them, locked in a stable, mutually benefiting dance and collude to carve out a captive market. I've always kind of seen our two parties in this way from my socialization. I'll talk more about that coming up. So, depending on the circumstance, and the issue at hand, I feel that I look at things critically to come up with a solution instead of just following a party, a religion, my parents. I don't feel like any one of those things helped shape my beliefs and my values. So, the agents of socialization, let's talk about those next. So the main one that you start out with is family. That's your first agent of socialization, and it impacts from the earliest age how you're going to view social sciences and political sciences, because your parents are going to shape you the most out of everyone. Well, whoever raises you, we're thinking about your parents here, for me in terms anyway. So this is your interest in politics, not only how you're going to believe in them, but also your interests. But one of the readings it talked about how you're much more likely to lean towards the party that your parents believe in, or at least into the middle, and to be an independent, but you're much less likely to flop all the way over to the other side. So then the next one is primary school, where you're introduced to an authority figure for the first time that's not your parent, so it's outside of your home. This is where you're introduced to group norms and social norms, and you begin to have that desire to fit in, to be accepted. You begin to perceive fairness from these authority figures that you didn't have before, so teachers, principals, things like that. Then the next place you're going to get it is secondary school, where you're taught the political order is really learned, and this is accomplished for a normal child through civics, field trips, and you get to distinguish between leaders and institutions. After that, you go into college, where you're really expected to start critical thinking, and really you see a lot of diversity among peers that wasn't maybe as evident in secondary or primary education, where you would have gotten that. So again, critical thinking is hugely, hugely important here. And you're given tools. You're given new tools at this step of socialization to make better informed choices. So you're given more resources to be able to make these decisions for yourself, because this is really the first point when you're like, okay, this is where I really get to establish where I am in the socialization framework. And then adulthood, which really feels like just an extension of college, where you're getting the media, you're getting religion. You decide, okay, I'm this religion, this is what I'm going to go with, and depending on that, it will be established. So community, your diversity is going to diminish, because at this point you're saying, I like this, I'm going to stick with this. And so unless you're really conscious of it, you're going to narrow yourself down until you're only thinking and seeing and feeling one way. So for me, I did not really have a traditional upbringing. I was homeschooled, and so I had a lot more of the family aspect of socialization, because my mom homeschooled me, and so she was actually a political science major, which has made this class really fun, because I always have had a very high interest in politics, and had a really high expectation of critical thinking from a very young age. I was asked to, we'd watch debates, and I would ask questions, and my mom would go, hey, that's a really good point, why don't you go research this? And so I'd go research it, and I'd find out the answers, and I'd ask more questions. And so I never had that, very just, okay, you kind of learn it kind of aspect. So in primary school, I didn't have the desire to fit in, to be accepted by my peers, because I never had that peer pressure, and so that kind of never fit in for me. I did see authority figures in other places, but my main authority figures were my parents, but not that I didn't have them in other places. So I did get that aspect as well. So for secondary school, instead of going on field trips and doing that kind of civics, the political order I learned, I still learned it. My mom was really awesome. She taught me all about that. But what I did was I did a different kind of aspect. I took on an active aspect. So instead of I learned the nuts and bolts, yes, but I wrote letters to editor of a local paper to try to get a political movement passed in our area for the libraries, and I took on more of a critical thinking, active perspective in terms of that as well. So I feel like my experience with the socialization was always more of a family and college and adulthood, because I was always expected to be critical thinking, and I was always exposed to a degree to the media and to, particularly the critical thinking. So, for example, for a little bit more specifics, for freedom left, for make your own rules, yes, I believe in that, because I was allowed to be myself. I was allowed to solve problems and think outside the box. So this was really, again, it was from very early on. It was my parents helping me make decisions and go forth and do that. Freedom right. Yes, I believe in this to a degree. Individual responsibility and initiative. Make your own luck. Free market, yes, but especially with the free market, more of a conscious capitalism from Mackey, the importance of community and environmental impact responsibility, not harming the environment. So yes, to a certain degree, but not harming others at the same time. So I feel like this was a consequence of family, because, as I said earlier, I was allowed to make initiatives and make decisions. So that's for that. Order left. So complete redistribution and complete equality. No, I don't actually believe in these things, because if you work hard versus someone who doesn't work as hard, I don't necessarily believe that you deserve the same thing. And after self-reflection, I realized that this was because of peers. So this was more of a primary school socialization. Even though I didn't have that, I still had peers. I still did things among peers that were my age, and I'd see me work really hard and be rewarded, and then someone else work not as hard or not at all and be rewarded in the same way. And that was really frustrating to me when I was really young. So I kind of grew up with that kind of a feeling. However, I do feel that we need to contribute to a degree. So we need to contribute to the community in terms of, like, we should be taxed because we all use the roads, for example, so we should all contribute to make our roads sustainable, right? So we can continue to use them. So distribute to a degree. And order right. Social rules. So rules in general. For example, for like in this week's readings, the swearings and the abortion, yes, again, to a degree. This is where, if it doesn't infringe upon my rights or somebody else's, I feel like you should be able to do whatever you wish you can do. So, for the swearing canoeist, for example, he should be able to swear like a sailor if he wants to, but that doesn't mean that I have to hear it, and it doesn't mean that I want to hear it. It doesn't mean that someone else does, and they should have to listen to it either. So it's again, yes, but to a degree. Inequality through charity with order right. Yes, absolutely. But again, to a degree, I do feel that some people need help, and those people should be helped, especially if they've had some kind of injury that makes them unable to support themselves anymore. If they were a veteran and they were doing something amazing trying to support our country, that's great. Some people, they've been hard on luck, they've been hard on their times. Yes, I think they should be helped to get back on their feet, because I do feel that people are responsible for themselves. And rules need to be in place for government to run, for things to be organized. And this is where I feel that I learned this with authority. So starting out with my parents and then other authorities later on, because I really don't feel that authority is a bad thing. I was raised in such a way that rules and order and freedom, they're absolutely fine, especially rules and order, because when I was growing up, they weren't in place for absolutely no reason. There was always a reason for them. There was a consequence for an action, and they were always very sensical. And so I don't feel that rules and order are a bad thing. Freedom, again, I was allowed to make decisions, and my parents, when they didn't agree on something, they'd talk about it, and from a very young age I was allowed to contribute to those discussions, and as I got older and older and older, I was allowed to make those decisions, and that gave me a lot of freedom. So just as long as it wasn't harmful, I was allowed to participate and do that. And so I feel that overall, I'm not just one quadrant. I definitely, my beliefs and my values weren't shaped by one thing. They were shaped by many things coming together, all aspects of socialization, and that as a result of that, I definitely believe in the crossing boundaries view of government. Thank you.